Dr. Rosie Gillespie and her student helpers are exploring spider life in Hawaii. Dr. Roy Horst is hot on the trail of Caribbean mongooses. Those fierce little carnivores imported from India years ago as rat killers that are now wiping out many animals native to the islands. Dr. Meg Lohman and her associates are collecting insects deep within the rainforests of Belize, one of the most biologically diverse and productive ecosystems to be found anywhere on the planet. And in Florida, Dr. Lou Earhart's team is racing against time to save sea turtles, that ancient line which, after surviving millions of years, is now under attack by relative newcomers to the planet. Us, humans. Around the globe, dedicated scientists such as these are battling perhaps the most serious ecological crisis facing us today: the total loss or extinction of huge numbers of the other living things with which we share the Earth, a loss that's taking place at a breakneck speed. To get an idea of just how fast species are disappearing, consider the following. It only takes about 20 minutes to watch this show. That's a short time. But during it, some scientists calculate, another species will become extinct, will be wiped out forever. This is the story of what's happening and why. Earth, seen here from the moon's surface, is a unique planet, very different from any other. And just what is it that makes it that way, that so sets it apart from any other place in the universe we know of? The answer is life, the presence of living things. It's that more than anything else, the truly amazing abundance and incredible variety of living things with which we share the planet, that makes the Earth so unique. From forests to fields, from across the skies to under the seas, today planet Earth is home to the greatest variety of living things it has ever known. Unfortunately, however, as we are now discovering, all is not well with many species. Researchers are finding that many, such as this tumor-infested sea turtle, are in such trouble that they are in serious danger of extinction. Of course, as the record of past life on Earth shows, extinction is nothing new. Earth's history is full of species such as the dinosaurs that once flourished and then died out completely. Take, for example, this barren landscape. It doesn't look like much. But in some places where the forces of wind and water have eroded it away, we can visit what's left of a long-gone and totally different world. These now stone logs are the fossil remains of long-extinct species of trees that flourished here hundreds of millions of years ago, when much of the area was covered by a vast tropical swamp. They are testimonies in stone to the fact that the forces of extinction are nothing new. What is new, however, is the fantastically accelerated rate at which it's happening. While scientists can't say exactly how fast today's living things are being exterminated, many researchers do believe that species are disappearing much faster than normal. The fossil record suggests that under normal circumstances, about 10 species a year become extinct. Instead, many scientists fear that we may be losing many thousands of species each year. So many, in fact, that the Earth, as we said earlier, may be losing its living things at the astonishing rate of a species every 20 minutes. Obviously, if that is what's really happening, planet Earth, and every living thing on it, ourselves included, is in big trouble. We don't have to go far when it comes to wondering why so many species are in such serious trouble. The answer is us. It's a people thing. Every year, there are more and more of us, destroying more and more of the natural world. Just how many more people is truly amazing. In 1950, there were just 2.5 billion people. Since then, the world's population has more than doubled. Today, there are more than 5.5 billion of us. And by the year 2100, it's estimated that the world's population will have doubled again to twice that size. Such stunning population growth is not good news for many of the other species that share planet Earth with us. Remember, for example, the turtles we saw earlier and the tumors that plague so many of them?
Great.
These poor critters are classic examples of wildlife that's suffering from the pollution that overdevelopment so often produces. These grotesque growths may, many scientists think, well be caused by a failure of the turtles' immune systems. Research is increasingly suggesting that this is brought on by pesticides and other such poisonous chemicals that wash off the area's farms, golf courses, lawns, and streets into the waters in which the turtles live. Along with polluting many of the planet's waterways, we've also managed to poison much of the planet's atmosphere. Emissions from factories and power plants, along with those from the countless millions of vehicles that crowd our roads, all contribute to the smog and other kinds of air pollution that plague so many areas and harm so many species. Look, for example, at this leaf. It's been poisoned by ozone, a main ingredient of smog. Scientists are finding that such ozone pollution harms many different species. And here's what happens to trees that have been poisoned by acid rain, another deadly form of atmospheric pollution. In some areas, whole forests have been destroyed by such human-made environmental poisoning. But pollution is just one of the things that's helping to bring on the extinction of so many species. Some species, such as many kinds of exotic birds, prized reptiles, colorful tropical fish, and sought-after plants, such as these rare orchids, and insect-eating pitcher plants, have been over-collected by greedy hobbyists. Still other organisms are threatened by our introduction of non-native species, such as this kudzu vine. Native to Asia, the fast-spreading kudzu was planted widely along roadsides to help prevent erosion. There, because it has no natural enemies to control it, the kudzu quickly crowds out native plants. And here's another troublesome non-indigenous species: domesticated swans that over the years have escaped or been set free. Originally brought from Europe, the imported birds are more aggressive than the native North American wild swans, and they've taken over many of the prime feeding and nesting sites the native birds once used. This has driven the native North American swans away from much of the territory they once inhabited. Along with such problems as pollution, over-collecting, and non-indigenous species, unregulated overhunting has also harmed many species. Egrets and other wading birds were, for example, plundered to near extinction by plume hunters after their beautiful feathers. These feathers were so highly prized as hat ornaments that they sold to hat makers for more than the price of gold. Other wildlife, such as buffalo, also suffered terribly. Once numbering in the millions, the great herds were gunned down to near extermination. But as serious as all these problems are, it's this, the destruction of their habitats, their homes, that poses the gravest threat to the world's wildlife. For when you wipe out wild areas, be it to build homes, put in golf courses, plant orange groves, build boat marinas, or cut down rainforests, the result is the same. Wildlife suffers. It's that simple. For the truth is, as the world's human population grows, so do pressures on other living things. Nowhere is this more obvious than in the rainforests. Though rainforests cover less than 1/10 of the Earth's surface, they are home to perhaps as many as 90% of all the planet's living things. About half of all the wood growing on Earth is found in rainforests. And the photosynthesis carried on by their green plants produces almost 1/3 of the Earth's oxygen supply. Yet, as vital as they are in many areas, rainforests are being chopped down as fast as possible, disappearing, it's estimated, at the rate of 1.5 acres a second. Poke around any wetland and you're likely to run into one of these little critters, a frog. Frogs are amphibians, and in the big scheme of things, they may not seem like much. Not, that is, unless you've been badly burned, suffered a heart attack, or needed a powerful painkiller. Unless, in other words, you've benefited from some of the more spectacular modern drugs. If you have, amphibians may be a good bit more interesting. And that's because the drugs mentioned, plus others, were all discovered by analyzing the hundreds of chemicals found in amphibian skins. Moving into a bit deeper water, we find still other wild species that are helping to keep us alive. For example, the shells of these crabs are yielding chemicals used to make surgical thread. And some sharks have been found to produce potent germ-fighting antibiotics, while the poisons produced by some fish show promise as powerful painkillers. And then there are the rainforests. Exploring them is like visiting a huge natural pharmaceutical laboratory. That's because the plants and other organisms living in them have yielded so many useful medicines. Scientists have found that rainforests and the rest of nature are such storehouses of useful chemicals that at least 1/4 of all prescriptions sold in the United States contain ingredients discovered by analyzing wild plants. Around the globe, farmers are benefiting from our planet's rich biological diversity. Take corn, for example. Strains of it have been genetically engineered to produce their own natural pesticides. This pest-resistant corn was produced by transferring genetic material from common soil bacteria to the corn plants. Genes from wild species have also helped to make crops resist diseases, use less fertilizer while growing, and last longer without spoiling. Drugs from amphibian skins, poisonous fish, and rainforest plants, and improved crops are just a few examples of how we all benefit directly from other, often seemingly valueless, species. They also highlight how the revolution that's going on in modern genetics is making us change how we think about other living things. Until recently, our main concern about most critters was how much meat we could carve off their carcasses. Simply put, if we couldn't slice a good meal off something, we weren't much interested in it. Today, we're starting to look at the world around us differently. We're beginning to realize that all living things, no matter how insignificant they may seem, are in fact complex natural chemical labs which produce genetic material that's unique to that species and that can't be duplicated or retrieved in a useful form if lost. Thus, when any species, such as these fossil shellfish, become extinct, their genetic material and any benefits we might gain from it is lost forever. But as important as such things as new drugs and improved crops are, they're only part of the reason that more is better. Only part of the reason that the Earth's rich biodiversity is worth saving. Just as important is the issue of stewardship, of caring for the planet, of deciding what kind of world we want to live in, what kind we want to leave for those who will follow us, what our role in nature should be. Does planet Earth belong to us, or do we belong to it? Do we have the right to destroy the natural world at will, or do we have the responsibility to care for that of which we are a part? Our answers will, to a large part, decide the fate of many of the planet's other living things, along with ours and that of generations to come.